Oh, this is how it's supposed to be done.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Dawn of the Monsters panel. So before we start, how many people here have played the game? Right on, right on. Okay, so I know we've got limited time. I'm going to try to get through this so we can do some Q&A. But first off, some introductions. These are, regular photos of Steve and Owen. So I'm Alex Rushdy. I'm the creative director on Ballroom Monsters.
And I'm Steve Roberts. I did feature design and combat effects for Ballroom Monsters.
And here's a photo of some of the rest of the team at XXVII Games. So, a lot of people worked on this. On design, it was Sean Fraser, Justin Fernandez, Thomas McCall. On art, there was Takashi, Lambert, Julie Ivy, Min Ching. On tech team, there was Marty Kuba and Michael Nicoletti. On narrative, Daikaiju-fanboy. Obviously on audio, Steve and Benjamin. And on music, Dan Rodriguez. And a lot of other people worked on this game. So for starts, a little bit about my studio. So I'm from XXVII Games. We're a video game developer based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We've been around for just over 8 years. Our first game was Runboat, which is on a ton of platforms. And then we released Pirate Pop Plus and Double Cross, and then earlier this year, Dawn of the Monsters. I think most of you are familiar with Dawn of the Monsters, but if you aren't, quick description of what the game is. Oh, I forgot I'm supposed to be recording this stuff. Hold on. There we go. Welcome again to the Dawn of the Monsters stuff. I definitely didn't forget to record it. So we released this game earlier this year, and thankfully, releasing a game is a very stressful thing, and it was fantastic to know that people liked the game. So, don't take my word for it. We got a lot of great reviews and great feedback from fans on social media and in our Discord and sorts of stuff. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to talk about kind of how the project came to be. So way back in 2016, we had a very early concept of the game. And initially it was actually a fighting game inspired by the game King of the Monsters for Neo Geo. I don't know if people are familiar with that game. Yeah. So initially it was actually a fighting game. We went through a couple of early concepts in 2016, and then it ended up getting shelved. We just kind of put it away, and we worked on other projects for a couple of years. Then in really late 2018, we brought the concept back. What we wanted to do was take the idea and do something unique and different with it. And something that we realized was, why hasn't someone made a cooperative kaiju game that's like a beat 'em up? The closest was like half of King of the Monsters 2, but not really. So we redid the art style, made it bolder and punchier, and decided on it again, and that's about when Steve got involved.
That's when Alex first approached me to start looking at doing feature design, and that's kind of just, I started brainstorming a lot of ideas, and I knew that Megadon was going to have to be the first one, so that's where it started.
Anyway, so we started working on an early prototype of it, and we brought the game to E3 2019 for some closed doors meetings to get a publisher on board. And we showed the game to Way Forward Technologies, who some of you might know for Shantae or Godzilla Domination on the GBA if you played that. So we have been working with them on a different project, and we thought, hey, we could work on another one of your projects, but here's what we're working on, what do you think? And immediately they were like, no, let's work on that. That's the thing about me. And then, 3 years ago, in not at this hotel, in the Crown Plaza. We unveiled the game at G-Fest at the opening ceremonies. So we played a quick teaser trailer, and then we had a panel later that weekend, and we had the toy, the first Megadon toy. We brought that there, and we anticipated, well, we'll come back next year and we'll show off more of the game. That didn't happen. But what did happen was Kaiju Online 2020. I don't know if anyone else here took part in that event. But basically it was an online stream, and we had a panel, we showed off really early gameplay footage, and it did great. I mean, it was like the most watched part of the event, so we were pretty excited to see people getting involved that early on. And then in 2021, we did our full proper reveal trailer where we showed off for the first time Aegis Prime and Tempest Galahad, and we showed it off on IGN. And that kind of kicked things into high gear as we just kind of prepared for launch. And then in March, we released it on all major platforms. We also did the Limited Run Games Physical Edition that was available from March to April, and it'll be shipping up later this year. And you know, that was kind of the whole saga. After that, we also did release an update, and then we'll talk about the future of the game as well in this panel. So, yeah, as far as the game's kind of core features, it's got over 35 missions, 2-player co-op, DNA elements, upgrade your kaiju, unlockable color palettes, and art gallery, the ability to replay missions to get a better score and ranking. And also visually it has a bunch of things that I'll talk about later, but it also has a ton of like dynamic destruction tech in it, so you can see there all the buildings destroy dynamically. It's not like, you know, the old Pipeworks games, you punch a building and it would kind of wobble, and then it would slowly just sink down into the ground. So these things are actually built like proper buildings and explode like proper buildings. We actually studied the tokusatsu style of miniature building and how they explode and they crumble to try to recreate that. The game has a ton of Easter eggs because we're all big kaiju dorks. There are way too many to list. There's an article on controlonmonsters.com that goes over some of them, but some of my favorites are probably unlockable color palettes. You can see here as well, there's a nice homage to King of the Monsters. And Sophia Cruces has, I mean, she's got the Magatama bead from, that's famous in Gamera, but she also, her headband is actually just based off Megadon's 3 horns. So I figured we'd play a little, for those who may not know, these are some of the color palettes you can unlock in the game. Can anyone identify any of these color palettes and tell me what they might be a reference to? You, so Dave.
No, I know the King Megadon stand is Godzilla.
Yeah, this one right here, that's Godzilla. You?
Okay, for Tempest Galahad, I know the top corner there, Amuro, which is reference to Gundam.
Yeah, that's the Gundam one. You weren't sure?
The second Tempest Galahad, I believe that's Tobacco from Cat Girl Without Salad.
Yeah, that is. I'm glad you got that. All right, we'll do 3 more. In the picture?
In the one next, I don't want to do 2. The pink and white that's RC from Transformers?
It's not actually. It could be, I suppose. It could be, but I'll get to that one next. With the Godzilla hat there and the yellow shirt. That is the 1954 Godzilla style. One more in the front row there. Sorry, this one here? This one? Yeah, that's Kamen Rider. Yeah. So here's the cheat sheet for if anyone who's guessing.
Ebra,
Charizard, Legendary Godzilla.
And this is just like a small
Devil
sample
Manus?
of some of the Easter eggs that we got. I mean, there's a lot in the game.
Oh, Wolverine.
So I mean, I don't need to go too in depth over each of the characters, but of course we got, Megadon, he's the heavy brawler type. We've got Aegis Prime, he's the quick combo heavy type. And obviously he's very inspired by Ultraman and Kyodai Heroes and that kind of stuff. Believe it or not, Steve did the voice for Aegis Prime.
Yeah, all the shouts and screaming. It's me.
Yeah.
No way.
There you go. Ganira, who's the kind of like minion control tanky type. Actually, I don't even want to talk about any of Ganira's or Megadon's audio stuff too.
We can get to that.
Yeah, we've got to have a slide for that. And of course, and Ganira is actually based off of, kind of based off Legion, kind of inspired by Gamera, but mostly her own thing. And then Tempest Galahad, a giant robot, the Atom, the atomic telekinetically operated mech, is heavily inspired by Mazinger, Giant Robo, Mikazuki, Gundam, just all giant robots. Despite being a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up like Streets of Rage, kind of the chief gameplay inspirations behind Dawn of the Monsters came from more modern 3D action games. So titles that offer a lot of mechanical depth, and they have concepts like parrying, dodging, blocking, and resources to earn and use on special attacks. Monster Hunter was of particular interest to us as we felt it struck an interesting balance between action and RPG elements, and kind of early on, we decided that Dawn would be 70% action game, 30% RPG. So the player's skill would be the main factor in determining success or failure, but building their character right could still have a major impact. No, you want to say anything about that? He's the audio.
I'm a sound guy.
He's a sound guy. And of course, the narrative inspirations, and there were a lot, but when we started the project, actually, we would have bi-weekly, or not bi-weekly, I think it was like twice a week, we would have movie nights watching as many kaiju movies as possible, so we could have the entire team well-versed in the genre. So all of that classic media influenced what we made, but at its core, I'd say that these three pieces of media were probably the most influential. Ultraman Gaia's realistic Earth defense team, overarching plot, and Lovecraftian elements. Pat Labor 2's tone, pacing, and portrayal of the kind of politics of government organizations, and Gamera's tying of ancient myth to modern monsters were kind of the major inspirations that influenced the story early on. And so our art style pulled from two major places. The first was the work of Hellboy artist Mignola, and the second was kind of action manga, that really bold, heavily inked style with a lot of onomatopoeias. So we kind of tied those together in a way that we felt kaiju hadn't really been represented before. And so these are some of the kind of ways that we used comic book or manga effects as visual effects in the game. So having text, Japanese onomatopoeias actually pop out when you do certain attacks, and having, hatching and so all sorts of action runs and stuff like that. Another thing on the technical side of Dawn of the Monsters is that the game actually mixes 2D and 3D assets with a unique dynamic lighting tech. And so even though a lot of people think the game looks fully 3D, all the characters are actually 2D. They just react to light dynamically. So you can see even in that GIF there, Megadon is holding a 3D object, he's sitting in a 3D scene, but he's actually fully 2D animated. Same with Ganira as well. So even though the light is rotating and lighting on the 3D objects, Ganira is also receiving that same light, and her shadows and highlights are changing accordingly. So we do this through a very complicated process. So we start with our character drawn flat, pieced together. And then what we do is we actually take each individual piece of Megadon and we hand paint normal maps. And so what these do is they allow the lighting information to be fed into the 2D asset. We also have masks that we apply and index colors. So basically we make a really funkily colored looking Megadon, and each color is kind of assigned a numerical value. We can swap out each color whenever we want. And then when we tie it all together, we put it in engine and we use our custom tech, then Megadon goes from a flat 2D character to something like this. This is all you.
So, all the images there are actually from creating the sounds for each of the main player characters. Like we said earlier, I did the voice of XXVII, and that's me in the recording booth, recording myself doing it. Screaming, just shouting to the high heavens. And then there's a box down there that has a ruler sticking out of it, and that's how we made Megadon's roar. We ended up taking that box, and then I had a cello bow, and I just scraped it across the ruler and made that really gnarly, like metallic-y, gravelly sound, which we ended up using pretty much with the like animal sound mixed in to make the Megadon roar. The glove is how I made most of Ganira's movement sounds, just to give it like this kind of almost rubbery, kind of lobster meat kind of sound to it. And then for Tempest, I used my guitar there with a talk box, and I had it running into my mouth while I was using the cello bow, and I would say different lines, and we would get different takes. And for Tempest, I actually got my wife to do that part, and we ended up getting Tempest's voice. And only a little bit of modulation to it to get what you would hear, so it's actually pretty fun from that. But on top of that, because I've talked quite a bit in the past about how the monster sounds are made, but we also, what's kind of interesting was trying to do the VO recording during the pandemic, because we all had to do it from home, and it's all online. And it's just an interesting process to try and get it all to work out. So we would have everybody in their own locations. We used something called Source Connect, and we would end up being able to all link into one session and record it. So that was one big challenge that we had to face that was unpredictable, but in the end it turned out pretty good. I weaseled my way into a lot of the monster roars, and I played quite a few characters. Like I played the baby crab, and I put my voice into all the different monsters here and there, just to add some elements. That's another thing of being made in the pandemic, was we didn't have a lot of ability to bring people in, so I ended up doing a lot of stuff just by myself.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add that. So Steve is a sound editor by trade, and he has ruined so many movies for me.
Like what?
We'll be watching a movie and he'll be like, "Oh, that's a stock bird effect," and I'll be like, "What?" And then we'll be watching another movie and he'll be like, "Hey, there's that bird sound again," and I'll be like, "Oh, I hate you."
Oh, that kind of guy.
Even before he ruined all the other movies for me, whenever we'd watch, anything with a monster in it, and the roar was a stock roar, we'd both be like, "Oh man, they could have made something for that." And so one of the first things we kind of set out with Dawn of Monsters was like every roar is handcrafted. There's nothing stock. There's nothing that we just downloaded from a library, and a lot of it was. And Steve kind of insisted on doing things, not just creating new roars, but also building them in the meat space. So I never would have thought to take an apple crate and a ruler and a violin bow and turn that into a monster roar, but I think, you know, understanding a lot of what the original Godzilla sound effects designers would do, right? They wouldn't pull from libraries. They would have to record stuff usually on their own or mix things in. So.
And on top of that, one of my big things that I wanted to do is because you can take library sounds and make them sound really cool and unique with a lot of these like audio plugins. But I wanted to avoid a lot of these new modern fancy plugins because I wanted it to sound more authentic to like Showa, Heisei kind of era Kaiju sound. So I really restricted myself in what digital stuff I was doing to all the sounds when I record them and go through them.
Yeah, so we, another really cool thing that was a kind of like a fanboy moment for me was we got to work with a lot of guest artists, and two of the biggest ones we got to work with were Shinji Nishikawa and Yuji Kaida. So Shinji Nishikawa, like, I don't know, the guy's a legend. He designed Biolante, he designed Orga, Megaguirus, like he's designed so many Godzilla Kaiju, he's designed Kaiju for Ultraman, he's designed, you know, all sorts of, even like toys and manga and all that kind of stuff. So we knew we wanted to work with him because we wanted to have some authenticity to the Kaiju in the game. There's a lot of time put into designing all of them, and we wanted to make sure that we had, you know, a living Kaiju legend design at least one monster. So he designed Agnator, and honestly, pretty much what he drew as his first take was what we ended up going with. It was a bunch of different takes, but he pretty much nailed it right out of the gate. And then Yuji Kaida, who's, you know, he's done so many movie posters, he's done so many illustrations and art books. He just got his first English language art book, I think, last year.
It's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's really nice. Model kits, like he's done all sorts of stuff. So he did the kind of the main poster for the game, and it's actually used on the cover for the deluxe edition from the Megadon games. And these are some more of our artist collaborators. I put these four on one panel because these have all been to G-Fest at one point. And the top two, Inside and Matt, are actually here right now in the dealer's room. I think Matt's actually got some really cool, massive Dawn of the Monsters prints. They're like 18 by 24. Yeah, and Inside did a really cool, actually, ink brush piece for us as well. DJ did a couple of pieces of promo art, and John Blythe Jr. actually did the header card art for the Dawn of the Monsters toys. So if you pick those up in the dealer's room, you can see his art's actually on the header cards for him. And we've got a few more collaborators. Gosh, my screen is so tiny here. Let's make this bigger. Yeah, so EJ Sue and Kim Jacinto are comic book artists that have worked on a ton of stuff. So EJ's most well known for his Transformers comics from IDW. But he's also worked on the Ultraman Marvel series, and he's worked on Godzilla Rivals, the comic series from IDW. Kim Jacinto has worked on Shang-Chi, he's worked on all sorts of Marvel properties, and the new Marvel Ultraman comic book series. Al, I don't know if he's working there now, but he used to work at Ubisoft. I think he still works at Ubisoft as a concept artist. He did all the character portraits in the game and designed quite a few of the characters himself. And then Zed is actually, he lives in Malaysia, if I remember correctly. But I just found him on Instagram and Twitter. He does incredible artwork of Kaiju, of Ultraman, of Monster and Alien. We knew we wanted to have him work on the game, so he did all the cutscene work. But that's not all. Xander Cannon, if anyone here, who here has read the comic book Kaiju Next? Okay, good. Next year I want to see more hands raised, because it's like my favorite Kaiju comic book series. So Xander Cannon, he did a piece for the game, he wrote that comic. Yerin Cho is actually a friend of one of our environment artists, and she did all the icon arts, all the augments, she did all those. And Luca is actually someone who created the Kaiju Eye. It's too hard to do it. Well, I'll tell you this. So Amelie worked on Attack on Titan. She's one of the voices in Attack on Titan and in SSSS Dynazenon, which is the sequel to SSSS Gridman. Christina V was a voice in Godzilla Singular Point. She was Baby Jet Jaguar. Xander Mobus is in the Ultraman anime on Netflix, the Evangelion English dub, and Monster Hunter Rise. And Rebecca Thomas is in the English version of Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0. But yeah, these people were great to work with. Super fun. They've been in a ton of great stuff. I mean, Xander is the announcer for Super Smash Brothers, so you know, if you ever pick a character and it goes Donkey Kong, that's his voice. And he was great as a Bach. He was really funny.
Yeah, talk about a completely different type of voice.
Yeah, totally different type of voice. He's got range. So yeah, so one thing I wanted to share with you guys something that's like totally new that we haven't told anyone yet. So early on in the game's development, it wasn't. I had mentioned King of the Monsters, and actually the game was at one point a King of the Monsters sequel. So this was some concept art from when it was a King of the Monsters game. Unfortunately, didn't come together. We couldn't make it happen and get that completed. But you know, I'm happy that we went with an original IP actually, because it gave us a lot of freedom to do what we wanted. So my apologies to King of the Monsters fans. There is no King of the Monsters 3 yet, but who knows? Maybe someday we'll make it happen. And you can kind of see a bit of the, you know, at least in Megadon and Aegis Prime, kind of where that inspiration comes from in terms of King of the Monsters, but yeah, AG. Yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons. AG was originally called AG because AG stood for Atomic Guy, and we changed it to be AG Super. So a few more things before we open up for questions here, but in terms of how to get involved and stay up to date, we have a Discord that, you know, there's a lot of people that chat, or honestly a lot of them just like to chat about Kaiju, period, but that's where we tend to post all of our updates, and it gives a direct line to fans to talk to us. There's our Facebook, Twitter, and of course our website is always up to date with everything that we're doing. We've got some fantastic merchandise available in the dealer's room, and also online at seismictoys.com and on pinbox.com. Another thing that we just announced is there's actually going to be a Japanese version of the game launching early next year, and the Japanese version of the game is going to have Japanese voice acting. So we have another Dynazenon actor. We've got characters who voice characters in Street Fighter and Monster Hunter, all sorts of stuff. The voice cast is available online. We've also got actors from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So we can't wait to share this game with Japan. And we also got the clearance to update the North American version with the Japanese text and voice option. So if you want to play the game with the Japanese dub for an authentic Kaiju experience, you'll be able to do that sometime early next year. And then I know a lot of people have been waiting for, you know, an announcement on things. We've received a ton of messages and requests for different things on Twitter and Discord, and I'm happy to share with you all. But we know that you've been hungry for the Sansote Ramen collaboration with Dr. Monster. So Sansote Ramen is the biggest premium ramen chain in Canada, and they're partnering with Dawn of the Monsters for the Super Mega Shoyu Spicy Ramen.
Take my money!
This is going to be launching, like, I think next week. It's a massive bowl of ramen. It's spicy, not too spicy, but you know, it's like a Kaiju-sized challenge. It's an intimidating bowl of ramen.
Can we pre-order?
Maybe, I don't know. Phone ahead. Yeah, phone ahead. But you know, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we are doing DLC for the game. So there's you know, not much I can share about what it'll entail right now. But we've definitely heard all the calls from people that wanted more content for the game. We want to add more content for the game. We want to expand it. We definitely want to increase the replayability. But we want to make sure to have the fans involved in this DLC. So, connect with us on social media and on Discord. We'll be sharing updates, and we want to kind of share the development really early on, and have kind of some of your choices influence what we make. So, yeah, not much to share on that right now, but it is coming, and we're hoping to, launch it probably early next year, or maybe end of this year. We'll see. See how quickly we can get it. Yeah. So thank you all so much. Thanks for coming out.